Well, it's looking like this summer, some or if not all of the theme park attention is looking over at Universal Studios with Epic Universe opening on May 22nd, but Disney is also out here trying to excite their fan base about some of the attractions they had announced at D23 last year, and over the weekend, Josh D'Amaro appeared over at South by Southwest to reveal some more details about some of the attractions that Disney had previously announced. And so in today's video, we're going to go through some of the things that they showcased at South by Southwest, and also some of the fan reactions to some of the things that they showed, because it's not all positive. And there's one in particular that I think Disney should take a look at, as it seems almost across the board that most people are not for where this attraction is going. I'll let you guess what that one may be, but we will talk about it here and we'll go into it more. So hi, I'm Jared with Capture the Magic. And the first one here we got from Blog Mickey, and it shows a sneak peek at the Monsters, Inc. door coaster load area. Featuring first ever vertical lift system for a Disney coaster. They talk about a little bit here. It says the signature attraction in the new Monsters Inc. land will be a suspended roller coaster that takes guests through the expansive door vault scene from the movie. This coaster will not only be the first suspended roller coaster for a Disney theme park, but it will also feature the first ever vertical lift in the load station. At South by Southwest, Disney offered a sneak peek at the load station mechanism, which will have guests enter the roller coaster on the ground floor before being lifted high above to dispatch into the attraction. And over on the Disney Parks X page, Twitter page, whatever you want to call it, they shared the clip of this video, so I'll watch it right here.
We're on in 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
I mean, it's a unique way to load a coaster. I mean, you're going to go, straight up. I don't know how tall that is, but kind of reminds me a little bit of Tron when it's going into part of where you go into the building, sort of how you go into there. But I mean, from seeing that, I mean, it looks pretty cool. And it's one thing I've said all along, that I think the Monsters Inc. land and this door, roller coaster, suspended coaster, whatever you want to call it, is one of the ones I think that could have the most potential in terms of being a fan favorite or something going over very well, as this type of ride has been something people have wanted for a long time. So this is obviously just a loading station here, but seeing that, I mean, that seems pretty cool. Obviously, if you're kind of weary of heights, I don't know how much you would enjoy that, but it's a unique way to get into the ride and go above it. So they didn't show anything else about the ride other than that. I guess they're kind of, and you'll see a theme from the South by Southwest of they're really starting to show more of the development process of these things, as Disney before has kind of been more behind the scenes, typically not showing a lot of things in terms of like as they develop this stuff. So this could be a different way that Disney's going about it, as I do think they're trying to, create anticipation for these things, bring people along the process perhaps. I know Muppet fans may not like it because it's going where Muppet Vision 3D is, but the load station thus far of the ride looks pretty cool, I will say. They also announced roaming BDX droids were finally be coming to Walt Disney World. It says Disney announced that the playful BDX droids that have been exclusive to Disneyland will soon be making a trip around the world, stopping in to visit Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at Disney's Hollywood Studios in Disney World. Says you might have seen the playful BDX droids puttering around Disneyland before, and soon they'll make a trip around the world to Walt Disney World, Tokyo Disneyland, and Disneyland Paris. Says that's in addition to the little droids appearing in the Mandalorian and Grogu film too. Says the droids made their debut in Disneyland back in 2023, as the theme park is the preferred playground for Walt Disney Imagineering. At the time, they were only a one-day test, but they were later brought back to Disneyland for a longer run. Critically, the droids represented a long-standing promise from Walt Disney Imagineering to have roaming droids within the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge land. That they did. They said there would be roaming droids. They also said there would be, either rewards or punishments for, say, crashing the Millennium Falcon. Like, there's a lot of things that they announced with Galaxy's Edge that didn't quite come to fruition, roaming droids being one of them. So I think adding this in, even though it's, 6-7 years later at this point, that's good to have that. I think roaming droids would help Galaxy's Edge, as something that I think troubles that land is the fact that it just doesn't seem like a Star Wars land. There's nothing about it really that sticks out as Star Wars, at least to me, personally speaking. I think it's more of like a desert town almost that, kind of has a space feel to it, but it's not, as you would imagine from the movies, a Star Wars world or land area. So I think droids would definitely help with that. More roaming characters would help with that. Also putting Darth Vader in there, some of the really popular characters from the original trilogy would help a lot too. But droids are a good start. They also said, speaking of the Mandalorian and Grogu, Disney announced a debut date for the new mission coming to Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run as well. and the date for that is May 22nd, 2026. So it is going to be a while before that is going to be Mando and Grogu. I'm not really sure. It's really too far out to really know what kind of impact that may have. Probably going to try and line up with the Mandalorian Grogu movie. And again, that's a movie. I don't really know how that's going to go because it's essentially season 4 of The Mandalorian, but that is whenever they will do the new scene in Smuggler's Run, which I do think if Smuggler's Run was a lot more like Star Tours, I actually think it would be a really cool experience if you had something different each time perhaps, and maybe take away the piloting aspect. If you're the pilot, it's great, but if you're not the pilot, or if the pilot is someone other than your own children, many times the ride experience is not great. I personally think it would be just better to have it a complete simulator ride with maybe some interaction that you do on the sides there. But it looks like the Mando and Grogu overlay is going to be coming May 22nd, 2026. And Disney also announced some more details about the Cars attraction coming to Magic Kingdom. Now, this is the one, unsurprisingly, that is being met with the most critical feedback, I guess you could say. But they revealed some concept art and details, and they showed a little clip of how they're sort of developing the ride as well. It says, now at the Future of World Building at Disney panel at South by Southwest, Chief Creative Officer Pete Docter and Imagineer Michael Hudgen teased that guests will need to strap in because they're in the process of creating a new type of ride vehicle for this experience. Our primary goal is creating an emotional experience for our guest, Hudgen told the crowd. For this Cars attraction, we need to invent a new type of ride vehicle. No one builds these in factory because it has to do so much more than just carrying you from one place to another. We have to create a car that conveys a feeling when you ride in it. Although looking at the clip they showed, I believe you could probably do this with a four-wheeler, but that's just me. The team took a trip out to the Arizona desert to jump in a real off-road vehicle to see what it felt like driving over rocky terrain. These are all the things Lightning McQueen and Mater haven't experienced before, like racing over rocky terrain, ascending to mountain peaks, and dodging around geysers. This is how do you take these real-world elements and put a car spin on it? From there, Imagineers worked with a motocross company to build a real dirt track to race around on and take that data back to begin work on creating how the ride vehicles will eventually move and race. We're using a customized production vehicle, Hudson continued. It has sensors all over it, and we're taking it for test drives on our dirt track to gather data on how the vehicle responds to different terrain. This is where we turn that feeling we want into real-world Imagineering, he went on to say. And they also showed that this is the concept art here for the cars that will be in there. So no, I don't think that's too surprising. That's kind of what they showed in the original concept art. Now, they also showed a clip of this over on Twitter X. And it says, Real-World Imagineering meets Disney Magic. Walt Disney Imagineering shares a behind-the-scenes look at off-road testing for the new Cars attraction coming to the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World. We'll take a look at this.
These Imagineers are testing the track for a new off-road rally ride coming to Magic Kingdom. Our creative team researched trails in Sedona, Arizona, identifying speeds, measurements, and terrain to inspire the movement of the ride vehicle. Now, here in Florida, we created a track with a controlled environment so we can recreate our favorite off-road elements and tell a story through movement. This helps us test and adjust the ride track to make sure every bump and turn is as much fun as possible before we start 3D modeling for construction. Every ride through gives us a better understanding of how the attraction will feel. We can't wait to share more updates with you as we develop.
I mean, first off, I'll just say, you've made a major mistake in that you didn't have a redneck who already has a four-wheeler that takes you around his dirt road and show you how to really do that. I would say, first off, if you want a real off-roading experience, I know some people. I grew up with some people. They can help you with this. You might be a little scared. You know, it'll be a little dangerous. It's not going to be really the most controlled environment. But if you want real four-wheeling, off-roading, that's the type of guy you need. More than likely, he's going to have a mullet. He's going to be wearing probably a sleeveless flannel shirt. And he's going to be a really cool guy, and he's going to show you how to off-road. So I'd say, first off, if you want the real experience, that's how you should go about this.
Wild card!
Yeah! Personally speaking, when it comes to the Cars attraction here, I've talked about it in numerous videos. I look at it there's three kind of things I break it up into. The ride itself, what it's replacing, and where it's going in terms of like what that land is going to be. So for me, it's replacing the Rivers of America. I still think taking out the Rivers of America is a mistake. I think that's something that people are going to miss. I think it brings a lot of ambiance. It's not something that, you know, people don't go over there to go look directly at the Rivers of America or ride the riverboat, but it creates an ambiance in that area, tells a story that is part of the overarching story of Frontierland and Magic Kingdom. And not to mention, it's, part of the park that has been there for the longest time. And it does have a connection to Walt. And when you have the most popular theme park in the world in terms of attendance, I don't think it means you need to rip up a major aspect of your park to replace it with more IP attractions. Now, when you're talking about what this is going to be, like it's going into Frontierland, I have a hard time understanding how cartoon cars off-road racing is translating into the Wild West. So it depends on what time period you're looking at potentially of Frontierland or the Wild West. Cars may have been invented, but it's not like you had off-roading cars that they're going to be using for this attraction. So I think it doesn't make any sense from a Frontierland perspective. Also, just the fact of cartoon-eyed cars racing around tracks in that area is going to be odd to me. And I think this more than likely means that Frontierland is probably going away and it's going to become something different, perhaps some sort of mountain terrain area, something along those lines. I'm not going to be surprised one bit because, again, if you look, we had a previous video talking about the Frontierland signs are no longer up, both of them, which is kind of odd. So I think Frontierland more than likely is on its last legs, or if it does stay Frontierland, it's just going to be a name only, and it's going to have a different meaning of what the land is, if I were to guess. And the third I would say is just the attraction itself. Now, for me personally, I don't much care to ride a ride that's simulating off-road racing. Now, I grew up in the Midwest. I've gone off-road riding before. I've done it. It's fun, but it's not something that, to me, it feels like a theme park attraction. Like I watched this walk, this driving around here, and I just don't really understand what the thrill aspect of this is supposed to be. To me, it's just something that doesn't seem that inventive. You're basically just simulating a BMX track, taking four-wheelers around on it. I just don't see where the imagination is in this. And again, just replacing the Rivers of America, I think this is a poor replacement for that. But just the ride itself, at least at this point, what we're seeing, I personally just don't have much interest necessarily in just an off-roading experience. Now, there could be more things they add to this. I'm sure there will be that make it more appealing. But just on the concept itself, I'm just kind of left with, okay. Now, if they were going to put this in another area, say Hollywood Studios, Beyond Big Thunder, I wouldn't really have any issue with a car-based attraction. I think a cars-based attraction is a good idea. I think maybe even doing Radiator Springs, given that is a success out in Disneyland, that would make a lot of sense to do that. But if you want to do an original Cars Land, I wouldn't be against one. I'm just against it going in Frontierland and replacing the Rivers of America. So it's basically where it's going. Now, again, thus far, the attraction itself, I haven't seen anything that makes me think, wow, I can't wait to do this. Unlike you used to look at the Doors ride with Monsters, Inc., that so far, that little clip they showed is interesting. That's a cool element that you're like, okay, I'm intrigued about what else this ride may be. At least what I've seen here with the car stuff, I haven't been that intrigued, personally speaking. And I'm not the only one. If you look at this post on X, there is a lot of feedback, and you have to really search to find something positive. We're just going to go through some of these because obviously scrolling X/Twitter, whatever you want to call it, can be a little dangerous, but we're going to go through this and just see some of the feedback here. I did comment. I said people would be on board with this if it wasn't going in Frontierland and replacing the Rivers of America. Braden over from Mickey View says, you're already building a bumpy thrill ride featuring Indiana Jones at Disney's Animal Kingdom. Nobody besides Jeff Vail asked for something like this to completely replace the Rivers of America. Save the Magic says, pure and simple, this is not Disney quality. It's a weak idea to replace an iconic part of the park. It's frankly boring, and the fans overwhelmingly don't want it. Save the Rivers of America, Disney. Don't do this. It's a terrible idea. It's a waste of money. No. Mickey Central says, cool. I'll put it somewhere that isn't Rivers of America. I think that's probably how most people feel. You're like, okay, but don't put it here. Like, just, that's a bad spot to put this. And again, what you're taking out. Disney Glimpses says no one wants this. And then he also ran a poll, and he asked, should Disney cancel its plans to reimagine Rivers of America? And it says 78% say yes, cancel it. 22% were no, bring on Cars, and about 2,300 voters in that. So it's a decent sized poll there, I suppose. And another person says, I'd rather have Rivers of America. Jess here says, so a simulated trail riding experience with characters we've never heard of before. Put this in Hollywood Studios where the movies are supposed to be. Don't fill in Rivers of America. This makes no sense for Magic Kingdom. Completely agree. Kate Fisher says, I don't know how we can make this any clearer to you. We don't want this. Mouse Secret says it's not creative, looks rough and jarring, not timeless, and will continuously break down due to being complex. Very valid point. And again, I'm also in agreement. It seems off-roading is jarring. And if you think about Dinosaur, the ride, that one already to me is very jarring. I don't know how much a jarring, riding in a car experience is really that enjoyable. For me personally, that's not something that I like a whole lot, which is the reason that I'm not a huge fan of Dinosaur, because I just feel like I'm being jostled around in the dark and then dinosaurs are just, roaring at me. Theme Park Dragon says, I'm trying to understand why you keep reposting these clips when the responses from your guests continue to be the same. The concept is fine. People like the idea. The location you've chosen and the destruction of rivers of America as a result is what people have a problem with. I mean, obviously it's social media, so you're going to see a lot of different, feedback, different takes, but you'll look at most of these and it's people saying, okay, the attraction's fine, the idea's fine, just don't put it here. And I think that is the overarching theme with what's going on still, is they're moving forward with this probably regardless of whatever the feedback is, which I think going into this time period, competing more with Epic Universe and Universal Studios, this is a little bit more of a dangerous game to play for Disney than it was, say, a decade ago. More competition means people have more choices, and if Disney's not going to listen to their fan base, they can respond and maybe, not go check this out when it opens. Now, obviously, people are going to go to this, but we're talking market share game. I'm not saying that Disney is going to be empty and nobody's going to go, but not listening to your fan base has been proven time and time again to be a bad business model and something that eventually will come back to bite you. Disney being as big as they are and big as they have been, they still have fan base, they still have market share, but if they continue to ignore the fan base, it's not going to go well, and eventually it will catch up to them at some point. It is inevitable. I definitely think if they're looking on social media, looking at this feedback, it's very clear what people think, and people have had strong reactions to the announcement that the Rivers of America will be going away for this for months now, and it's been pretty consistent that most people have said the same thing about this, in that the attraction idea is okay, but the location is just not good. And just Disney fans and people on Twitter, X, are not the only ones talking about this. You even have X-Imagineers talking about this. Jim Schul here, who is an X-Imagineer, says, the quote confirms guests won't be getting Radiator Springs, but an invented location while losing Rivers of America. Can someone explain this chain of reasoning? And they go from this quote, says that this new ride doesn't take place in Radiator Springs, but will instead be in a thrilling rally race through the mountains, so they want it to feel just right. And then you have another former Imagineer, Eddie Soto, who says, reminds me of Indiana Jones, which has high maintenance costs per vehicle with tire wear, etc., and it's indoors on a flat surface. Like Indy, this vehicle will need beta testing at 14 hours a day ASAP to see what the true wear life expectancy will be running gear. Legal will weigh in on the whiplash risks as well. I assume they know this and probably testing now. And he's commenting on this about they showed like a little bit of a model here of the ride vehicle. So it looks like it is going to be a tracked ride. It's not going to be trackless. And, from this one, it just looks like you're going over, bumps on each side of the car, which again, I don't know, obviously there's going to be a theme to the ride, but just looking at the concept of it, it just seems like a bumpy car ride. I'm sure they'll have more details, but at this point, I'm not seeing the great vision for this necessarily, other than, maybe it's because I've been off-roading. I know what that's like, but I suppose if you haven't been off-roading, maybe this is something that is much more appealing or seems very unique, but I guess that depends on your perspective. So all in all, South by Southwest, obviously some of it was received better. I do think the Monsters, Inc. ride looks interesting. I'm intrigued by that concept. They didn't show anything for villains. They didn't show anything for what's going on in Animal Kingdom. It was mostly just this Doors ride, some of the stuff coming to Galaxy's Edge, and then some of the stuff, obviously, for cars going into Magic Kingdom. But in terms of everything they showed, I think the strongest one was Monsters, Inc. I think the stuff for Galaxy's Edge, it's a nice addition with the droids, but it's not anything to me that's a game changer. I think you need a multitude of things similar to that to make Galaxy's Edge better. I think more interactivity in that land, more meet and greet opportunities, more roaming characters would be a great thing. Also, just include all the characters from Star Wars. I would say don't limit it to the sequel trilogy. But the one, again, I think that got the most backlash and people being negative reactions to it is the stuff they showed for the Cars, attraction. And I think a lot of people are making their voices be heard. Now, at this point, it's probably well past the point of return for Disney. I'm sure they're not going to make any changes to this. I know there's some people online that are saying, let Disney know, and how you're unhappy. And I'm sure they're looking at the comments on this post right here that we're looking at. I have no doubt they see this stuff. I just don't think it's going to change the course of what they're doing. As part of the reason, I think, is they don't want to pay for what the refurbishments need to be for the foundations for the rivers of America. I think that's part of this also. And they just want to put something in here that they think is going to bring people into the theme parks. So more than likely, Disney has already made up their mind regardless what people think, what the fan base thinks. So they're moving forward with this. But never hurts to let them know what you think. I always like to do that. I think you should as well. And if you agree with it, if you think it's going to be a good addition, then you should also let them know as well. But from what they showed here, I mean, again, they're just showing some tidbits here behind the scenes. I do like that. I like seeing a little bit of this stuff. And, likely this is what we'll continue to see probably for, upcoming D23 events. I don't think they're going to have many, brand new announcements at future D23s. I think it'll be a lot of these updates about the current progress of the things that they have announced. So I think this is something that they're probably planning on doing and maybe sort of trying to bring people along to, help build anticipation, keep them engaged with what's going on, especially with Epic Universe opening, with Universal Studios. I think they're definitely probably worried about people not being engaged in the brand and going and checking out their competitors. So I think this is their way of trying to, keep the fan base in the loop of what's going on, keep them excited. But I will say that's going to be difficult to do, considering a lot of this stuff is not going to be done, in my opinion, for 3 to 5 plus years. Talking Villains Land, probably even longer than that. So it's going to be very difficult to keep them engaged on an attraction that is years out and something that a lot of people have some questions about. But I think this is the way they're doing this. And of course, I will reserve final judgment till this stuff is done. Check it out, see how it operates. But given that the recent Imagineering track record has not been the best, I think there's legitimate questions about some of these things and how they're going to be built. And especially when you have former Imagineers that have been speaking out about a lot of this stuff as well. I think there's legitimate questions, and Disney does have a lot on the line with competing with Universal and Epic Universe, so they definitely need to hit home runs on these things. So they've got a lot of pressure. So hopefully they rise to the occasion and deliver on these things, but we'll have to wait and see what the final product is, but I'm sure we're going to get more details as time goes on about more of these things. And when we do, we'll talk about it on here and let you know about it. But for now, that's going to be it, though, for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do lots of coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, what do you think about the things that Disney showed at South by Southwest? And does any of it change your mind from what they had previously shown? And until next time, we will see you in the parks.